Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And in this video, we continue our look at the process of decision making, how leaders make decisions. So in this particular video, as you can tell from this next slide, we are dealing with the topic of rational decision making. Generally speaking, how you would want business leaders to be making decisions. And you can see the process outlined on this slide. The way that, generally speaking, we would prefer that wise, smart, experienced leaders make decisions is first by recognizing and defining the decision situation to begin with. What is the issue? What is the need that is needing a decision to be made? What is the business situation that needs to be addressed? Half the problem, you understand, in rational decision making is correctly identifying and defining the situation to begin with. Only having accurately defined what the real situation is can you really apply reasonable and wise alternatives. And indeed, that's the next step. Once you have defined the decision situation, the next step is to identify what are the possible alternatives to choose from. This is decision making after all, so what are the options you are deciding between? Once you have identified the possible alternatives, the next step is to evaluate the reasonableness of each of those alternatives. How easy will each alternative be to implement? What will be the attendant cost of implementing a particular decision? And realize that wise leaders understand that not all costs associated with choosing an alternative are measured in dollars and cents. Some of it has to do with how other people will feel about a particular decision. Nevertheless, you're also evaluating not only the attendant costs, but also what do you believe are the estimated chances of getting a good outcome from particular options. Will you choose an option that only has a 1 in 10 chance of having a great, wonderful, preferred outcome? Now, after all of that evaluating is done, finally, step number 4, you're going to select what you believe, with your wisdom and experience, is the best alternative to deal with the particular decision situation at hand. And then, of course, number 5, the green one, once you've selected it, now you have to implement that alternative. You have to execute, and that will call upon you leveraging and deploying resources at appropriate sequences and appropriate times. It means communicating appropriately with all the parties involved, exactly what is being done and why is it being done, and you implement the chosen alternative. Realize that from there, however, rational decision making isn't complete until you've gotten to step number 6, which is to follow up and evaluate the results you've gotten from your execution of the chosen alternative. Because then you have to measure and assess, did you get the desired result from executing on the decision you chose? Did you get 100% of the desired response? Or did you only get a certain percentage? Are some people not responding the way that you had hoped that they would, et cetera, et cetera? Is the market not responding in the way that you wanted in terms of market share or revenue or profit or adoption of your solution or any of those kinds of things? And then what's the next step? Do you have to amend or adjust or refine the way that you're deploying that alternative? Do you need to backtrack and select another alternative instead? All of those things in terms of, in a sense, closing the loop on this rational decision-making process. So let's see if we can give you an example to contemplate just as we look at this sequence of steps in rational decision-making. And you can see here in this next slide, step 1, the manager recognizes and defines a decision situation. In this particular example, a hotel manager sees that customer complaints have been increasing. Now, it doesn't tell us what the time frame is, whether it's over the last week or the last month, but nevertheless, the hotel manager is aware of the fact that it appears that customer complaints have been increasing. So step 2, the manager identifies alternatives for addressing the situation. This is clearly a situation that seems to require action. At least that's what he's contemplating, he or she. And so you see there, example, the hotel manager can hire new staff, can offer service quality training, or can leave things the way that they are. And of course, realize that in any decision-making matrix, there is always the option of saying, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to leave things as they are and see whether or not over the next month that customer complaints decrease, that perhaps you have some experienced staff who are out on vacation, and generally those are the ones who rally the troops at the front line. There may be reasons why the best alternative is to leave things as they are. So step 3 then, the manager evaluates each of these possible alternatives. You can see there, the hotel manager decides leaving things as they are is unacceptable, but that the other 2 options may work. So at least he or she has made one step in the winnowing or selection process by disqualifying the third of those 3 alternatives that he or she identified in step 2. So let's keep going. Step 4, the manager selects the best alternative. Hiring new staff is too expensive, but the hotel has unused funds in its training budget. And so he or she deems that that's the best alternative at the present time. Remember, some of it is the selection itself, and some of it is the combination of the alternative and the timing that you're going to implement. And so in step 5, the manager implements that chosen alternative and institutes a new training program to train existing staff on the overall level of service quality given to guests. And in step 6, the manager follows up and evaluates the effects of the chosen alternative. In this particular example, after 6 months, the manager notices a significant decrease in customer complaints. And so it does appear that there is a direct correlation between instituting this new training program and bang, the following consequences, that in looking at things over the next 6 months, so letting folks sort of digest the training, reorient their habitual behavior to integrate more of the training they were just given, that after 6 months, not only has there been a decrease in customer complaints, but the decrease has been significant. Now, the interesting thing in this, you realize if you think with a scientific mind, the fact that there is a correlation between a training program and then commensurate decrease in customer complaints, there may be a causative relationship. It may be true that the training program that was developed directly addressed some of the areas that were resulting in increases in customer complaints, and therefore it quelled that growth and brought the significant decrease. However, you also know there are possible other reasons why this correlation between the one event, the training program, and the second event, the decrease in customer complaints. As we've looked at in a previous lecture, it could be simply that these employees finally felt like they had an opportunity to air their own concerns, grievances, disappointment, etc. And the fact that a new training program placed someone to deal and talk with them directly, that was in and of itself was encouraging to them, no matter what the content of the training program was. You understand sort of the point that I'm bringing up here is that you know that without further sticking in the dipstick, all you know is there is a correlation between these 2 events. You would really need to follow up with individual employees, perhaps, that had been named in previous customer complaints and see if their behavior has actually changed before you are actually able to link the training program as causing the decrease in customer complaints. Nevertheless, that is, in a sense, just looking at details. And so really what we want to point out in this broad overview of the rational decision-making process is generally how we like to see wise managers and leaders implement decision-making, that there is a thoughtful and objective and rational and, as much as possible, emotionless objective look at what is the situation. Can I objectively identify it? Can I then measure out and identify what are the possible options I have before me to deal with this situation? And that in weighing all those options out, including the option of, well, maybe it's best to just sit on my hands for now, not do anything and keep watching, then selecting the wisest alternative after evaluating all those different options and executing on it, and then waiting to see what the results are in a reasonable period of time, and then following up and closing the loop. Is this something that a tool, an option that we should put in our back pocket the next time we see a business issue like this? Or is this a one-off? The next time we see something like this, will the context and the situation be so significantly different that we have to brainstorm an entirely different set of alternatives to address the situation? Hope that makes sense. This then is a broad overview of the rational decision-making process, and we'll see you in the next video.